All right, guys, welcome back. And the last of our morning games, which was the Vikings traveling to Chicago to take on the Bears. The Vikings won 19 to 13. This was an ugly one offensively. Kirk Cousins finished 21 of 31, 181 yards and a touchdown, 8.74 fantasy points. And the Vikings play the 49ers next week. Kirk Cousins is a guy I am sitting. And I mean, he lost J Jet mid game this past game. But if this is an indication of how the Vikings are going to look without J Jet against a horrid Bears defense, it's a interdivision matchup. I understand a rivalry game that could be, played a factor, but gosh, that's just not a good look. The pass catchers, I expected more targets.
More.
Yeah, I mean, he only threw the ball 31 times. I don't understand it. Jordan Addison was the top fantasy earner. He had 3 catches for 28 yards on 5 targets with a touchdown, so 11.8. KJ Osborne, 4 catches, 48 yards, 5 targets, 8.8. Brandon Powell, we saw, we'd mentioned him before because he was getting good targets last game. We saw his snap share increase heavily. He played 60% of snaps, but only saw 4 targets, caught 3 of them for 20 yards. And then TJ Hawkinson, I mean, he's very reliable for a tight end. He had 8 targets, 6 catches, 50 yards, 11 points. It was a scary week. We expected more. Jordan Addison, I'm comfortable starting week in and week out with Justin Jefferson gone. Even it's just tough because next week against the Niners, I don't know how this offense is going to perform. I just really don't. Um,
Nah.
I expected more from KJ Osborne, especially only 8.8, only 5 targets. That's the main thing here. Is I expected these targets to jump up like crazy. And when you're getting 5 for Addison, 5 for KJ, and 4 for Brandon Powell, it's, I mean, that's just scary. I don't know if it's the guys not getting
Yeah.
open or what the case was, but the Bears
I
defense
don't
is
know.
terrible.
I think that this just goes to show us that while Justin Jefferson's going to be gone, the undisputed top target in that offense is going to be TJ Hawkinson.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. His fantasy owners benefit the most. I mean, when we're wondering where a lot of these targets went, the guy who got the second most targets was Alexander Madison. He finished 18 carries, 44 yards. That is terrible yards per carry. That's low 2 point something. 7 targets, 4 catches, 28 yards, 11.2 fantasy points. Now, he played 78% of the snaps. That's something that's worth noting. We didn't know how Cam Akers would eat into that backfield, and at least as of now, I mean, he kind of trended backwards this game a little bit. Cam Akers he only got 1 rush for 8 yards, saw 1 target, caught it for 7 yards, 2.5 fantasy points, only 16% of snaps. I mean, I just don't know. You drafted Cam Akers high. I feel like that's a really tough
He's
one.
just a Madison handcuff at this point.
Yeah.
I think that's the reality.
Yeah, you might have to let him go if you don't have Madison. I just don't see him being
There's just
vice.
guys with more valuable. Like I said, I can go back to this time and time again, but just to put it out there, for example, like Kareem Hunt,
Mhm.
think he's rostered in 46% of leagues. So that means there's 54% of leagues where you can go out and get Kareem Hunt.
Mhm. It's
He's
just
just going to offer more.
yeah, and I mean, it was an ugly game all around. I mean, going to the Chicago side, whew, Justin Fields, 6 for 10, 58 yards, no touchdowns, an interception, 8 rushes, 46 yards, 5.92 fantasy points. He, injured that thumb and left. He is doubtful for week 7. He actually played 53% of snaps, and I just mentioned that because in 53% of snaps, he had 58 passing
Yeah.
yards. It just was, and we'd seen the Bears kind of seem like they're turning it around a little bit, and then you have a game like this where you're like, the Vikings don't have Justin Jefferson, their defense isn't particularly the greatest. This can be a pop-off game for Justin Fields, and again, it just was not. The consistency is not there. Um, and with him being out, we saw Tyson Bagent come in and I guess look slightly better than Fields did in this game. He was 10 of 14, 83 yards, threw a pick
He got
also.
he got strip sacked for a touchdown on his first NFL snap. So I feel kind of bad for the guy.
I was going to let that slide, but, Schiff had to mention it. The guy, I mean, what. It,
It's a terrible way to start your career. Like, I feel
yeah.
so bad. Like, he had no idea the guy was coming. He gets absolutely destroyed. And then they just, it's like, oh my God. It was one of the, like the Saints. For the Bears, everything that could go wrong in that game went wrong. Like,
Yeah. So, I mean, yeah, he rushed for a touchdown, finished with 6.7 fantasy points, 47% of snaps. I'm giving the rundown on him because it does seem like Justin Fields will miss and he will be the starter. They do play the Raiders next week. I mean, the Raiders defense isn't, top of the line or anything, but their pass defense has actually been serviceable this season. So, I mean, it's a hit to everyone on that offense. Khalil Herbert is on IR. Roshan
yeah,
Johnson should probably return this next
he
week.
should be back.
But Deonta Foreman, 15 carries, 65 yards, one catch on one target for 2 yards, 7.7 fantasy points, played 61% of snaps. With Roshan returning, I just I don't know, like, I don't feel comfortable starting either of them because I don't know who's going to get the start. And with Bagent at QB instead of Justin Fields, their explosion kind of evaporates. I just don't expect too much from this offense. The one guy I mean DJ Moore in this game, 5 catches, 51 yards, 8 targets, 10.1. A decent week, not terrible. He gave you double digits, and with how their offense looked, I mean, you can't complain too much. That DJ Moore got you that. Again, going into
Mooney got
next
more than
week,
5.
yeah, no. Darnell Mooney got 2 catches, 48 yards,
He got
6.8.
more than 5
I
points.
wrote it down. It almost wasn't even worth writing down. He's not relevant
Nah,
going forward. It's
we said
just
last week you should not even have him rostered anymore.
no, and
There's no reason.
yeah, and then Cole.
He got less targets than who the hell is this guy? Tyler Scott.
Yeah, yeah. It's bad. It's bad for anyone in that receiving room not named DJ Moore, and even this next week it may be bad for DJ Moore just because their quarterback and someone who also took a very big hit this week, Cole Kmet, had 2 catches for 9 yards on 3 targets, 2.9 fantasy points. I know we both really like Cole Kmet. He is super talented. He was Ben Justin Fields, one of his favorite targets. Tough game for him, and with Fields going down and probably missing this next week, it's just I'd say the only
Yeah.
play I could accept from someone is if they told me they're starting DJ Moore still. That is the only play that I could possibly accept for you in this next game.
I guess I wouldn't hate the Roshan Johnson start. Just
Our run
the
defense
only
is
reason
bad.
I say that, yeah, the Raiders kind of beat up 2 weeks in a row by running backs who haven't done anything this year. And I mean, Deontay Foreman lost a fumble in this one. They didn't give it to him at the goal line. They decided to do a QB sneak with the backup instead. He was a healthy scratch up until this point. I see him complete. Even like with him being in, they still ran Dontarian Evans 9 times for 32 yards.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it'll be the Roshan show next week. Whether or not it's a good show or not, stay tuned and find out. I don't think it will be because with the back, I'm just going to be honest, with the backup quarterback and the offensive line that the Bears have, the Raiders defensive line has had a lot of success this year. Led by
Yeah.
Max Crosby, I think it's going to be hard for them to get any production on the offensive side of the ball. And they might end up going down early, which, as we know, you go down early, you can't really run.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it sucks to see the Cole Kmet hype train coming to a screeching halt, but when the starting quarterback only throws for 58 yards before he exits the game.
Yeah. Only had 10 attempts halfway through the game. It's just tough.
This was the Justin Fields that we saw in the beginning of last year, the sub 20 attempt. It's just good God.
I mean,
I don't know. I don't know. The
yeah,
Bears are so back and forth with how they perform. They gave us like 2 good weeks in a row to come out and do this against a middling defense. So, yeah, man.
yeah, and that's
It's
that's
nasty.
it is nasty, and I mean, on that note, that's gonna do it for our last Sunday morning game. As always, we do really appreciate any support you guys are providing to us. If you have any questions, comments, advice, anything you need related to this game or fantasy football in general, feel free to drop a comment below. We will be back with the afternoon, the Sunday night, and yeah, stay tuned.
See you guys.